Behind you. I'm going to tell you a story that happened when I was 17. This story still freaks me out so much, and I don't even know what happened that day. I would like to have your opinion on it. It was in November, and my friend Jacob was going to have his birthday for these 17 years. Me being a good friend, I proposed to him to sleep at my house and then go for a walk the next day with his friends in the forest. He accepts. Everything goes well. He sleeps at my place, and the next day we leave with friends for 2 hours of road. For the forest it is a bit far, but at the time I lived in the city center. After the road, I realized that I forgot the keys to my house at home, and that therefore the door to my house was not locked. But hey, I tell myself that we are in town and that few people frequent the suburbs to fly. The day is going well and it's time to go home. I was stressed about knowing if my house had been robbed. Then in the end, I said to myself that there was little chance. My friend Jacob wanted to spend more time with me before I left for my studies, and so did he, so I accepted that he still sleeps with me. We walk in and I see that my house is still intact, but it was nice and wide open. So I walked around the house and noticed something. The cellar door, which I never opened, was open, and there was white paper on the floor. I quickly realized that we had to call the police and check if there was anyone there to reassure us. Me and Jacob decided to shout that if the stranger didn't come out, the police would take care of it. I was paralyzed with fear, and I feared that the stranger was coming. Bad news, the stranger who was in the cellar cried, "You are not at home. Get out of where I lock you up." Jacob got scared and asked me to come and see if there was the police. Luckily she was there and took him away in a car. The police found kitchen knives, an axe, iron chains and a board. There was also a white sheet on which was written, "Behind you." I didn't understand from the beginning. The police told me later that the individual ran away from an asylum. Today I am 25 and now I always check if I have the key on me or not. "30 seconds changed my life." This happened in January or February of 2002. I'm a female, had just turned 21, and was living with my father in California. For context, I was extremely naive and living a pretty directionless life. I'd grown up in an affluent area of LA, went to private school, gone on to college, and dropped out. I was dealing with major depression, partying a lot, hanging with the wrong crowd, hooking up with random strangers. My mom didn't know what to do with me, so she sent me to live with my dad across the country in Sacramento. Now, I'd been living in California with my dad and pretty much lived like an entitled teenager. I did have a job in retail, but other than that, I sat around and didn't do much. My dad is an alcoholic and didn't help much. At some point, seeing him passed out in the living room one morning and working a dead-end job kind of got to me to wanting to return home to LA. My mom was unwilling to let me live with her again. I called my best friend at the time. Her mom was like my family. They didn't have a lot of money but bought me a bus and train ticket back home. They said I could stay with them until I got back on my feet. I was relieved. My dad was so sad to see me go, but he agreed to drop me off at the bus station downtown. The thing is, he had to take me before his work shift. My bus didn't leave until later in the afternoon, so I'd basically have to wait from 9 a.m. until we boarded. My dad was very nervous about leaving me there. He warned me that this station was in a rough part of Sacramento and that I needed to be careful. I'm thinking, yeah, okay. I was totally oblivious. Dad drove me to the station. It was surrounded by people waiting for their buses, a few stragglers outside the entrance. It was cold outside that day. Inside the bus terminal, it was pretty empty. Dad helped bring my luggage inside, 2 large suitcases containing all of my possessions. If I didn't want to be dragging them around with me all day, I had to pay to store them in a locker by the desk. I can't remember exactly how much, but I was broke and couldn't spare money for that. I looked warily at the clock. My dad looked at me with sadness. I could tell he was worried about me traveling by myself. I hugged him and tried to look as confident as possible. We said our goodbyes and he left. I've traveled numerous times, made several trips by plane by myself, and I've traveled to various countries with groups. I was not adverse to adventure. What I was not good at doing was reading people. I genuinely saw the good in everyone and had never had a negative experience, even at 4 a.m. in downtown Seattle. If you know anything about Seattle, it has a robust public transportation system, and I was no stranger to weirdos, drunk people, and hostile exchanges between people on the bus. I'd usually just ignore people or continue walking. In this situation, I felt I was totally in my element as I'd taken public transportation many times alone. Back to the station, I decided to go outside and have a cigarette. The conundrum was that I had to keep an eye on my 2 suitcases. I positioned them near the front desk in such a way that I could see them clearly from the front entrance. I then head outside to get my nicotine fix. I stand off to the right of the front door. I'm smoking and trying to shuffle through my extremely cheap and very ugly purse, which contained my passport, because I was totally irresponsible and lost my driver's license. As I'm shuffling around, a man with a large knitted hat asked me for a cigarette. I glance at him. Sure thing. I hand him one and a light. We chat briefly and I study his face. He's not unattractive, not scary looking, maybe a little disheveled, but I couldn't tell if he was homeless. No immediate red flags. I felt safe as the outside of the terminal was littered with people, some smoking like me, others walking briskly to their destinations. Notably, an older gentleman is standing opposite me on the left side of the entrance. As I'm talking to the man in hat, this older gentleman seems to be staring at me intently. You'll understand why soon. Man in hat asks where I'm from. Am I catching a bus? Comments on the cold. In passing, I casually lament that I am running low on smokes. He looks at me and says, "Oh, there's a gas station just around the corner. You can get some from there." I think this through for a moment. My bus wouldn't come for hours. I could easily grab a pack and be back in time. Something stops me, however, as I remember my luggage sitting unattended. I said I'll think about it and turned to get back inside. Hours pass, and every once in a while I would go back outside to smoke. Man in hat seems to be there every time. At some point, he mentions the gas station again. "It's just right there. I can take you." Again, I decline, and it's not because I'm scared. It's because I'm worried about my luggage. I go back inside. The last time I go outside, the street is eerily quiet. No one there. I grab another cigarette and place my purse on the ground by my feet. I look up. Man in hat is there. He asks for money. This is where my gut finally turns and I feel uneasy. I say I don't have much and I can't help him. I hurriedly finish my cigarette as I am suddenly very aware that my purse is laying next to my feet, exposed. I lean over quickly to pick it up and mumble something about going back inside. As I raise up, Man in hat reaches out and grabs my purse and says, "Let me help you with that." My body seems to drain itself and I immediately grab my purse closer to me. "I'm good," I say. Man in hat suddenly switches from harmless random dude into nasty thief. "Give me the purse, you bitch," he hisses. He says it through clenched teeth, like he's trying to be quiet. I'm struggling against him now, desperate as I realize no one is here to help me. I start screaming, "Help!" Man in hat is shoving me with his hip and pushes me against a wall. "Shut the fuck up!" I'm desperate now. This guy could easily pull out a knife and shank me or punch me. I cling to my purse and hope to God the cheap handles hold together. His hands are on top of mine and he shoves me again, calling me a bitch. I scream louder. From my left, I suddenly hear, "Are you okay?" Remember the older gentleman from earlier? He seemingly steps out of nowhere and loudly asks what's going on. I shove Man in hat hard with my left thigh, and I think he realized at that moment that if he did anything to me, he could be identified. He lets go of my purse and runs off. I'm shaking and run tearfully inside, leaving all the gentlemen outside. I was too frightened to say thank you. I spent the rest of that day hovering by the front desk. I was terrified. I thought of the 3-day trip ahead of me and shook with dread. I held my purse in my hands with a vice grip. When my time finally came to board the bus to the train station, I glanced in terror over the other passengers. No way was I sitting next to anyone. Every person became a potential criminal. I slumped into a seat and cowered by the window. I then heard a voice behind me. "I was going to warn you," said the voice. I whipped my head around. There was the older gentleman casually sitting behind me. My eyes were probably as large as dinner plates. "I knew he was targeting you. You need to be more careful." I tearfully thanked him. He just stared out of the window and nodded. We didn't speak again. That moment changed my life. My struggle with Man in Hat must have only taken 30 seconds, but the repercussions last even 20 years later. I think back to how adamant Man in Hat was about me going around the corner to the gas station. My hair still stands on end when I think about it. Would he have robbed me over the few measly dollars in my purse? Murdered me? Raped me? Who knows? It chills my blood to think about it. I spent the next 3 days paranoid and unwilling to leave my luggage unattended. I clung to my purse and used it as a pillow on the train when laying down. When I used the restroom, I rolled my luggage into the tiny bathroom with me. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. In chilling contrast, the train trip was quiet and uneventful. Staring out the window as we entered Washington State, the snowfall and evergreen trees weighed down by heavy snow. I was no longer the naive and reckless young woman at the Greyhound station. I was a changed person. Man in Hat at the station. Let's never meet. A stranger in Canada. When I was 18, my boyfriend Jake, 21, and I spontaneously decided to go to Canada to go bar hopping. It was a few hours away from our home, so we made the trip. After getting settled in the hotel, we went to the first bar. We had a drink, then we went in search of a new bar. Jake and I were chatting and walking when a man in a big puffy coat stopped and introduced himself as Ian. He noticed we were speaking English and invited us to go bar hopping with him. Turned out he lived just a few hours from where we lived. After a few bars, we met up with 2 of his friends and went in the strip club. Ian paid our cover charge and drinks with a huge wad of cash. I had never seen that much before. We started talking about weed and Ian invited us to his hotel room to smoke. I had way too much to drink at that point, off being sick in the bathroom after one puff. Thankfully, Jake wasn't that drunk and we both eventually made our way back to the hotel. What a crazy night. The next morning, after a hangover breakfast, we were walking to our car to leave when all of a sudden, Ian and his friends started calling our names. We all remarked how strange it was to run into each other again. Ian invited us all for a smoke at his friend's house. It was a shady-looking rundown apartment. We smoked and somehow the topic turned to how Ian makes so much money. Without directly saying it, I could tell he was into drug smuggling, possibly over the border. Ian suggested that I could make some good money doing the same. My heart dropped and I immediately felt uncomfortable, unsafe. I needed to get out of that apartment, that city, that country. Jake looked over and saw how freaked out I was. He casually played it off. "Yeah, okay," like he was joking. But Ian's friends started nodding their heads, suggesting where I can hide it. Jake gave Ian his real phone number. Why, I don't know. And we said our goodbyes as we had a long drive home. Jake is driving, and shortly after we take off, we see Ian's car behind us. Very weird. We make a few turns, got a little lost, and he was still there. Jake made a few more erratic turns just to lose him. We both did not have a good feeling about Ian anymore. Finally, we made it across the border. No Ian in sight. It was a weird drive home. A week or two later, Ian called up Jake on the phone. I have no clue what was said, but I know we never picked up a call from him again. Maybe it was a close call, maybe not, but I got that deep gut sinking feeling that something bad was going to happen if we were in Ian's presence any longer. Listen to your gut feelings.